The second aspect of the orb, or the secondary function of the orb, is that at times in images it also portrays what's unseen. And so holiness is unseen, at least in the painted image. So the halo again confirms the holiness. But also there are events in the life of Christ and in the life of saints where things had taken place and they were not physically seen. Christ descending into hell. If we have any icons of Christ's descent into hell out there, you'll see painted around the figure of Christ this same Gloria. It may not be a circle, it may be an oval, or it may be have a point at the top, an arc down on both sides, and layered maybe 2 or 3 times within, indicative of the Holy Trinity. A revelation unseen but made manifest by the power of the Holy Trinity. So it's also kind of in 3 layers of color. Or 2 for the human and divine natures of God, of Christ, the Son of God. Let's go on to the next.
Can you tell us what medium do you use? Do you use acrylic or do you use...
That's a good question. That's a good question. I use dry organic pigment, but it's mixed, in the case of murals that I've painted, it's mixed with an acrylic emulsion. It dries faster, but at the same time I can control the intensity of the color by adding the amount of pigment that I need. And then some acrylic pigment. Obviously, acrylic doesn't make every color in the rainbow, but there is a particular palette that's necessary for icon painting. Mine happens to be a palette of 9 colors. And there's even, it's kind of been debated for a while whether or not acrylic is, obviously it's a suitable medium, but there is a ongoing debate at times whether or not only natural, organic pigments can be made. Natural referring to what only God has placed in the world as created. And anything made by man, or anything synthetic, even if he takes organic elements, reconstitutes them into something synthetic that looks like what nature makes, even though when you make a pigment from a rock, you have to grind a rock, you go through a process to make that pigment and add chemicals to it to use it as paint. So it's a toss-up. How strict do you want to be about this? Or how flexible? And I think the flexibility is important, because even in that flexibility, the integrity of the image rests more in the content of the image and the purity of the materials, or the intent to use those materials in a pure way, rather than in a way that produces something decadent and contrary to doctrinal teachings of the church or the scriptures. The reason why icons were accepted as legitimate expressions of the prototype, God, Christ himself, is because the matter of the world, not only humanity, but the matter of the world is sanctified by God's presence in it through the Holy Spirit. So it's we don't want to stray too far. We don't want to make. Many mediums are used to make icons, mosaics, wood, carving, and there's no prohibition against either one. There's even no canonical prohibition against statues. there's no dogmatic prohibition of the use of statues. And that came from a dogmatic professor of mine, Serge Verhofskoy. So if he's wrong, then I apologize for myself and for him. But I don't think he is. Although the Orthodox Church never went in the direction of incorporating statues in the liturgical way of worship in approaching God. Any other questions? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, this icon is actually an icon of Saint Macrina. She's also called Macrina the philosopher, and she's named after her grandmother, Macrina. And she holds an icon of 3 of her siblings.
One of her brothers, who was a
Saint Gregory of Nyssa.
He referred to her as the teacher.
Yes. Saint Peter of Sebaste and Saint Basil the Great. And interesting, particularly the relationship between, there was another brother who died young on a fishing expedition. He was brought back dead, wasn't a cleric of the church. And Saint Basil really fell apart over that death and was helped by his sister to understand it, but then also assume a position within the church as a cleric. Because prior to that, he taught rhetoric himself and thought very highly of himself, but she kind of put him in his place. And St. Gregory of Nyssa struggled with the same issue concerning the death of their younger brother. And he and St. Macrina, on her deathbed, have a conversation about the parting of the soul from the body and resurrection and how that's all interrelated. And as a result of that conversation, St. Gregory of Nyssa writes...
it's a treatise on the resurrection. I can't remember the title of it exactly.
It's a treatise on the resurrection concerning the salvation of the soul. So let's go to the next slide.